Yes, and good evening. How are you? This is Dr. Gerald Thompson with Your Health Matters, and it does. And 2025 is a new year. It's a year that around us we see lots of things happening in our communities, in region, globally. I suppose a day or two doesn't go by and we don't see the passing of some individual person. May wonder if the death rate has significantly increased. Well, certainly with COVID it had, but it's stable now. But strangely enough, we know more of the people who die because we're older. And because I'm older than Kamal, I would know more people who die because they register in my mind. Kamal would know some of them, but others wouldn't register in his mind. And if you're a teenager, well, it's only the persons very closest to you, in your communities, or celebrated individuals that individuals really know and hear about death. And so as a person who's a little elderly, right? I'm a senior citizen, Kamal, I would know of many other senior citizens who pass. And I would then hear also about the young people also who might have passed too. And so would you. But it's interesting that there's been some comments recently on the human metapneumovirus. And I did a program on it recently and pointed out that this HMPV virus is not new. It's been around for decades. I would have known of it as a virologist and so forth. It pops up from time to time. And that, we thrive on statistics. Statistics are sometimes misleading. If there was one case in a year and the next year there is 100 cases, then what is the percentage increase? Did anybody realize that? Well, if the cases was one case and then it increased by 2, and that's doubling of the cases, isn't it? And if it had increased by 3 or 4 cases, that's a quadrupling of cases, going from 1 to 4. Going from 1 case to 100, that may seem as if it's a mega increase. And I pointed out that in places like Malaysia and so forth, Kazakhstan, where they've had a few cases, in India, where they had 9 cases, compared to the previous year, they may not have had many, they may have 1. So if it's gone from 1 to 9, that's a big increase. You hear me come out? But in real numbers, the rate would increase by hundreds, 900%, But in truth, the number has only increased by 8, an additional 8. And certain of these countries had 34 more cases. I'm making this point because there's some individuals who are going around trying to state that because persons took the COVID vaccine, that's why human metapneumovirus is increasing. And that's really ridiculous. That's a joke. And they're even questioning that in China, the emergency rooms are full of people. Well, the truth is that, yes, there's human metapneumovirus cases in China, but the big outbreak of viral illnesses in China is the flu. And you heard me say that the flu is accounting for over 60% of the emergency visits in China alone. And that maybe some 15, 20% is that of human virus, HMPV. But it's important to know that this normally produces a mild upper respiratory illness. Remember, all viral illnesses will give you fever, will give you a runny nose, will give you a sore throat, will give you muscle aches, making you feel malaise. As the temperature goes up and the viruses pass around your body and your blood, guess what? Your muscles start to feel ache. You may get a rash, you know? You start having all sorts of other symptoms. Some people may have a little diarrhea. Some people may have a little nausea, vomiting. All these things take place with all kind of viral illnesses. That's why it's hard to distinguish them. So we basically have to do surveillance. Somebody told me this week, oh, Jamaica reported a case. No, they didn't. They are surveilling our cases and haven't as yet picked up any cases in Jamaica from what I understand. Now, tomorrow they may do. The next day they may do. But they haven't got that yet. And to say that taking the Pfizer vaccine would have caused people to develop this virus, let me tell you this. In China, China developed 3 of its own vaccines. I don't think a single person in China ever received the Pfizer American vaccine. The Chinese developed their own. The Cubans developed their own. The Russians developed their own. India developed some. You know, there was a European AstraZeneca, you know, and America developed several vaccines there too, including the Pfizer. So let me ask the question. If the Chinese did not produce Pfizer, did not produce the Pfizer vaccine, if the Chinese did not take the Pfizer vaccine, if the Chinese had taken their own anti-COVID vaccines, then can you tell me why a person's saying that the Chinese are coming down because they took the Pfizer vaccine? That doesn't make any sense, you know? And almost every year we know, and the theories are always there, why swine flu, avian flu, other type of flu start in those areas like Southeast Asia first. They're cold winters and spread. That's something that's well known, you know? So I wanted to just clear that up and to once again put in your mind those individuals who used to say taking the COVID vaccine, within 6 months, everybody will drop down dead. Or within a year, they switch it to in a year, everybody will drop down dead. Now it's 3 years. People are not dropping down dead as a result of vaccine. Some people would like to say that if you get knocked down, it was the vaccine. If you've had cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, it's probably the vaccine that induced that. And somehow or the other, there are people who believe this crap, you know? There are people who believe this crap, but most of all, the individuals who are pushing it are laughing their heads off, you know? So how some people take it up and are spreading the same thing. I wanted just to get that off my chest, you know? And make that abundantly clear. But more recently, there has been a big rethink on the subject of alcohol. And recently in Thailand, I think the case was being made when I visited Thailand someone pointed that out, that alcohol kills far more people than drugs, than road accidents and so forth. You can imagine that 2.6 million people die from alcohol globally each year. That's about 5% of the global deaths are due to alcohol. And they come from many ways. Not only does it come from accidents, somebody who's alcohol intoxicated running off the road or knocking someone down, you know. It doesn't come only from what's called cirrhosis of the liver. We've heard about that. The alcohol is so toxic. It destroys liver cells faster than the liver cells can recover. And a lot of scar tissue start to develop in the stomach, scarring up the liver. And as a result, you develop an enlarged, or I should say, you develop cirrhosis of the liver. Cirrhosis of the liver. The liver is important to cleanse your body of lots of toxins and toxic chemicals, all the byproducts that, you know, a car burns fuels and puts out some toxic stuff in its exhaust, right? We have a couple of ways of getting rid of our exhaust. We urinate out a bit of the exhaust. We basically, you may think we defecate, but what's defecation is not really, defecation is what hasn't been utilized, you know? What we haven't used, the body hasn't used that yet, so we let that out. But really, the liver is the detoxifying part of our body. Kamal, you realize that? The liver has filters and this, and just like an oil filter and a gas filter and all that kind of thing, and tries to capture a lot of the stuff that have been produced inside our body. Remember I said your stool, defecation, that stuff is in your body, yes, but it's not really in your body. It's inside your intestines about to be expelled. But the stuff that's gotten into your body and is being used and is being, you know, exhausted and so forth, that stuff needs to be expelled or detoxified, and the chemicals that are being produced that must be neutralized and put into the best form, and the liver does it. The liver does that. And if your liver starts to go bad, starts to get cirrhosis of the liver, scarred over, then all those toxic stuff that to build up in your body, build up in your blood, the levels start to increase, and that has some severe consequences. But I want to point out that a recent article also pointed out that a substantial amount of people who consume alcohol, it increases their risk of cancer. Alcohol as a cancer inducer. Alcohol as a cancer inducer. Now, this is important, right? How does alcohol cause cancer? Alcohol causes cancer in a number of different ways. And number one, when you drink alcohol, ethanol, and it gets into your body, it's absorbed. Some is absorbed in your mouth, some is absorbed in your stomach, most is absorbed in your intestine. And when it gets into your blood, it is converted into something called acetaldehyde. Kamal, have you heard of formaldehyde? Have you heard of formaldehyde? Formaldehyde is what they use to, like, if I have a frog or an insect and I want to keep it in a jar to preserve it for a long, long time. Yeah? Almost like alcohol, but it's this formaldehyde. They're related, but the next stage of alcohol can be converted into formaldehyde, but in our body, it's converted to something called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde. That's so scientific, eh? But guess what? This acetaldehyde is toxic. This acetaldehyde can damage our cells and can stop these cells from repairing themselves because they're so damaged. You know? Now, that's no problem because your body's always producing more cells, right? Your body's always producing more cells. But if you drink a substantial amount of alcohol, which is converted to acetaldehyde, you're damaging more cells that can be replaced. You get what I'm saying? You're damaging more cells that can be replaced. The second way, did you know that alcohol does some changes to certain hormones? Do you know that it actually enhances the effect of estrogen as well as insulin? Imagine that. It enhances those. So hormones, these hormones are chemical measures, and the higher levels of estrogen and insulin can make our body cells divide abnormally. And if cells are rapidly dividing more, there's an increased risk that some of this may turn into cancer. But did you know that alcohol, where it comes into contact with certain tissue, it also causes changes? So when you drink a glass of alcohol, right? What is alcohol? Where is it going into? Your mouth. Then from your mouth, where does it go? To the back of your throat, where your voice box is, called the larynx. And then just before it goes down into your food pipe, that's called the pharynx. The pharynx is the back, that's the real back of the throat. That's the real back of the throat. And then your food pipe is a long tube called the esophagus that goes down to your stomach. And then there's your stomach. And then there's your intestines. And then there's your large intestine. Guess what? Because alcohol is touching these things, there's an increased level of cancer in the mouth, in your voice box, in your pharynx, in your esophagus, your food pipe, your stomach, as well as your large intestine. It's amazing how the amount of cancers that are caused because alcohol has actually touched it, you know, and induced it. This is what we find out today. That term I told you, acetaldehyde, this toxic form of chemical that, let me get that clear. The alcohol in your body, certain enzymes and other products act on it to cause it to convert to acetaldehyde. Now, your body will eventually take care of the acetaldehyde. Your liver will say, you know what, acetaldehyde, I'm grabbing you, I'm taking care of you, I'm going to detoxify you. But if you are a person who drinks a substantial amount of alcohol, irrespective of what kind of alcohol, wine, beer, spirits, rum punch, the alcohol, if you are a frequent user of the alcohol, if you are a person who drinks a lot or even you drink moderately, the alcohol is going to have those three effects. One is conversion to acetaldehyde. Two, its impact on estrogen and insulin to help speed up cell multiplication. And three, a direct effect by touching your mouth, larynx, pharynx, is food pipe, and getting down into your large intestine. That's not good. Every year, we hear a lot of songs during Carnival celebrating alcohol. Kamal, you do a lot of songs like that from time to time. Huh? Do what? Rob do that. Rob do that. Yes, we know Rob do that. But guess what? We celebrate it. And we celebrate the man dropping down in a gutter. And we celebrate the man mashing up his head and so forth. The head bad. You know what I mean? We love that. You know, of course, we don't celebrate him beating his wife because he drunk. We don't celebrate all that, but we celebrate the nice times of alcohol, the feel and so forth. And somehow or the other, these songs win the competitions. They win the road march, they win the disc, they win the power soca, they win. They win. And it's not just here, they win in Trinidad, they win in Grenada, they win in St. Lucia, where they're all over the place. You know? But alcohol, we now know, is a big cause of cancer. It's not the only cause. Lots of other things cause cancer. A lot of other toxic stuff causes cancer. Genetic factors come into play. But alcohol also has other effects. And you know that alcohol has a lot of impact on fertility issues. You won't believe the amount, the destructive nature of alcohol on the sperm count. You know? Just think about it. You may be drinking rum thinking that, well, boy, you know, that's going to make me a more power man, you know? But really and truly, it doesn't. It takes away a bit of the numbers, the numbers of sperm that men are able to produce, you know? Do you know alcohol also reduces testosterone levels in men? And don't talk about the impact. If this acetaldehyde is damaging cells, what's probably one of the most sensitive cells in the body? Kamal, if I ask you, do you know where the most sensitive cells in the body are? Huh? A little higher up. Yeah? No, a little higher up. A little higher. He said the tongue. He said the nose. Then he said the eyes. A little higher up than the eyes. What organ is much more important? The brain. The brain. Oh gosh, you know, went to the tongue, the nose, the eyes, and then we got to the brain. I tell you. You may have heard of Alzheimer's disease. That's a natural form of dementia. But you know there's alcoholic dementia? A lot of people who you think may have dementia, a lot of it's alcoholic dementia. Alcohol has damaged, the acetaldehyde has damaged the cells of the brain to an extent that the person isn't recovering. Do you know that alcohol is also partly responsible for high blood pressure? You know, alcoholics typically run higher blood pressures, and there's heart damage, and then of course I mentioned cirrhosis of the liver. It is a serious issue, and I want you to know too that, and it's something I recently discovered, that a lot of cosmetic products are made out of alcohol related products, you know? There's some short chain alcohol, right? Which are considered bad alcohols. And they are known as drying agents. You know, alcohol it can dry you out. But these special type of alcohols are found in products that if you put them, if they're in the chemical, they can dry out your scalp or dry out your hair. And there are lots of hair products that having these bad alcohols in them that can dry out your hair and your scalp, leaving your hair cuticle tough and brittle. Well, ladies would know about this. Men don't deal with some of this stuff. But this causes frizz. This causes your hair to look frizzy. Whereas there are some long chain good alcohols that don't do so much drying, and they're better for your hair, better for your skin, but it's easier to get products with these bad alcohols in them. I just want to mention that about the bad alcohols and good alcohols in cosmetic products, because that they have a lot of them. We put them on our skin, we put them on our hair, we put them, on our scalp, and it's important. So first ask me, what amount of alcohol is going to cause these type of problems, like trying to induce cancer? Well, there's some thinking that some alcohols may not be so bad. Let's say dry red wine. That's lower in sugar, but because they are red wines, they may have certain antioxidants in them. Red wine has in a substance called resveratrol. It's an antioxidant, and it's a cancer-fighting type of substance. So red wine is good. Now, I'm not going to make the case that white wine is bad, because dry white wine or champagne is also good. You understand? But it doesn't have the antioxidants in it. Now, certain cocktails, all cocktails are going to be bad for you. Light beer may not be that bad. In St. Vincent, the Caribbean, we don't have light beer. You know? Huh? We have? Campari. Campari is a light beer? No, sorry. We have Campari, you said. And kombucha, you know, these things are not so bad. I'm making the case that excessive alcohol can lead to a lot of problems, one of which is certainly cancer, an inducer of cancer. And I repeat again, it can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, liver disease, cirrhosis, can lead to, therefore, to stroke, alcohol use disorders, certain mental problems, eventually dementia. digestive problems. Alcoholics have serious digestive problems and a weaker immune system, so they're more prone to all sorts of different infections. So we have to look at this. And as I said, the quantity, 12 ounces of beer is considered not bad, or 8 ounces of malt, or 5 ounces of wine, or 1 ounce, or a shot of a spirit of alcohol, a liquor is not bad. But when you start going 2 shots, 3 shots, you start going to beer, half a case, and so you're getting into some serious quantities there, and that'd be a serious problem. Now we have the line open up for. Did we take a break? We take the break and we come back and we open up the line and so forth.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Call them today at 784-456-1170. People's Pharmacy also stock vitamins and supplements, personal care items, toiletries, children and adult pampers, and much more. And of course, get your prescriptions filled by a friendly and professional pharmacist. People's Pharmacy. Come in today and let us serve you.
Yes. Now, let me get back to what we are recommending. That people who drink alcohol, you should do so in moderation. And by moderation means limiting the consumption of alcohol to 2 drinks or less a day. 2 drinks or less a day. And that is for men. For women, 1 drink or less per day. Women, 1 drink or less than 1 drink per day. That means half a drink, whatever the case may be. Now, heavy alcohol drinking is defined as having 4 or more drinks on any day, or 8 or more drinks per week. And that is 8 or more drinks per week, especially for women, and 5 and more drinks on any day, or 15 or more drinks per week in men. Now, the evidence indicates that the more alcohol a person drinks, particularly the more alcohol a person drinks regularly over time. There's 2 factors. The more you drink and the more you drink what you're drinking regularly on a consistent, continual basis, the higher will be the risk of developing an alcohol-related cancer. Remember I said the alcohol is converted to acetaldehyde, which can have an effect all over your body. The alcohol seems to cause estrogen and insulin to be overactive. Cells could multiply faster and some could just get away and start to just go crazy. But it is the alcohol direct effect touching your lips, mouth, gums, your voice box, your larynx, that is your pharynx, larynx and pharynx. Pharynx is the top of your food pipe, your food pipe itself, your stomach, large intestine. All these areas have varying degrees of cancers in people who drink alcohol, consume a lot of alcohol. Now, you're going to tell me, Dr. Thompson, you're a party pooper, man. You know what I mean? We will drink. We will have some fun. You know what I mean? We basically feel nice. I sure you have some alcohol, and yes, well, I tell you, I do drink sometimes, but I definitely try to drink in moderation, serious moderation. People laugh at me sometimes. You're in a party, you're having a bitter lemon. Yeah, what kind of man are you only drinking a bitter lemon? What kind of thing is that? Well, I have my convictions, you know. I who knows if I will eventually catch some kind of from a cancer, but I want to make sure that I could reduce my risk, and you could reduce your risk too. Remember, the line is open, and we 457-9997 WhatsApp and direct calls. We'd love to hear from you. What do you think? What do you think? I'm not gonna ask you if you are an alcoholic. I'm not gonna ask you anything like that. That's personal, you know. I'm gonna ask you: did you know, or did you realize that alcohol itself was such a big inducer of cancer, and that it is something that more and more studies are now recognizing? But guess what? Most countries don't do much about it. When you hear about the top alcohol consuming countries in the world, well, guess what? Those areas, formerly the old Soviet bloc: Romania, number 1, Belarus, number 2, Lithuania, all those countries there, high levels of alcohol consumption. And it's a serious matter. Of the top 10 countries, most of them are Eastern Europe, you know, Austria, all this kind of stuff. And it's a serious problem. And as a result, they will have a higher incidence of cancer as a result of alcohol. Kamal, we haven't seen any calls, any messages. You know, it's not a topic that people like to call in about, because the person who calls in, somebody may think that, well, you know, they're alcoholic or they consume a lot of alcohol. But remember, it isn't just people who are alcoholic. It's just if you consume a lot of excess alcohol, it can help to induce cancer. It's not just alcoholics who throwing themselves down in a gutter, you know, who hitting their head, you know. No, in fact, it's less so. It's people who just consuming it secretly, have a bottle under their bed, have a bottle at work, in a cupboard, in a locked cupboard. They go there and they will change the bottle. The bottle looks as if it's a mountaintop bottle and so forth, you know what I mean? And they're sipping some water, you know. But when somebody sipping water and they're going, you know what I mean? It's not the same, you know. Kamal, I don't know if you have any ideas on this. Why is it that we celebrate alcohol so, you know?
I mean, I don't know. Is it that feeling that they probably get a feeling drinking alcohol? Does it create? Because I've asked the question.
Alcohol loosens your inhibitions. You know, you feel a little bit more talkative. You feel a lot bolder. You may feel a little better. You may feel lighter. You know, and whether among friends or in female company, and so maybe it makes you it can make you feel good.
Well, I was just going to say there are people who say if I like to go on stage to curb stage fright, they would drink, right? And it seems, I don't know if I should say it works for them or it seems to work for them. Yeah. And I guess that in itself can lead to addiction. I've tend to ask the questions on early mornings when I see somebody, as they say, fine one, you know.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I cannot understand it to this date.
Yeah.
Why?
You know,
And it's almost like something that they must or they have to do. They're already in the habit, so it's like a must do.
yes. Yes. These persons are not necessarily who label as alcoholic, but some of them are, you know.
I mean, if it's the first thing in the morning,
So there's an abuse. There's an abuse of the alcohol, and they have an alcohol use disorder, and they are addicted in the same way as somebody who might be addicted to heroin or some other kind of drug, and that alcohol is a drug.
it is.
Yes, and that some persons, their genetic makeup means that they could be addicted or at risk of addiction to alcohol. You know?
They're addicted.
Yes.
And they pretty much are in for the same risk of cancer, damaging the liver.
Yeah. Yes. The thing is that they may not be aware of this. Many persons who drink may not be aware of the impact of alcohol on their body systems, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's dementia, whether it is this, that, or the other, whether it is cancer. They're not aware of it. And that's why programs like this are bringing it to your attention. So if this is something you're hearing for the first time, it should make you think and reflect on whether you are a person who consumes too much, whether you will say, to hell with that Dr. Thompson. I like my rum. He ain't stopping me. I'm going forward. That is also true. But a lot of people eventually reach what's called a Damascus moment, right? Where they realize, maybe sometimes after a doctor has made a diagnosis on them, they realize that they've had a problem, and that the problem has led now to other problems. And these other problems demand that the alcohol consumption be addressed. It's a serious issue. And as I say, alcohol-related deaths account for 5% of global deaths. One of the strangest things is that, did you know that alcohol consumption, though, has been steadily increasing in less developed countries, and that it may not be the purest form of alcohol. They are necessarily drinking Johnny Walker Black, but they're consuming, in the 1920s, a major country in the Americas prohibited the drinking of alcohol. This is called prohibition. It lasted for 12 years, from, you say, 1920 to about 1932. But guess what? Whereas the people who pushed prohibition felt that men who were drinkers were now going to go to church, and that they were going to stick with their families and help raise their kids and be good husbands, that these alcohol-producing factories were now going to be storage sites for not alcohol, but for wheat and barley and other grains that were food. Well, within a matter of a couple of years, within a matter of a couple of years, things went underground, right? Things went underground. And sad to say. That's where you started having Buster Keaton. That's when you started to have Al Capone. That's when you started to have Bonnie and Clyde. All these individuals, the mobster, gangster area. That's when you started had massive corruption in the police force, who were allowing people, or the police were being paid off to allow illegal alcohol to move from one area to another. There were what they call speakeasies. I don't know if you heard of that term. There were bars below ground that you could come out of your house and go to a speakeasy and drink, and come back out and say, well, I'm a law-abiding citizen, you know? Guess what? There was so much crime as a result of prohibition, people trying to fill the demand that was there, that in 1932, America had to abandon prohibition of alcohol. And they've learned that when you try to ban something that is illegal, be careful that someone is going to say, oh, this is a nice business. I can supply that product illegally and make some money from all the people who still demand those particular things.
Dr. Thompson, I don't know if you might be able to answer this question, but a lot of people use alcohol people use alcohol for different reasons.
Yeah.
For fun, unfortunately, to drown their sorrows, to get bold. But a drug that is one can consider to be so destructive, why isn't there a ban, or why isn't it prohibited?
Because of what I said, the experience in 2020 is you try to prohibit it, people will find other ways of using it. And you will then try to spend more and more money to stop them from using it. And they will then start having other means of getting it to the people who still want it, secretly want it. And you will find that even the politicians, even the mayors, even the big wigs, the big businesses people, and so they will abide by the talk, but they won't walk the walk.
Isn't that the same issue that we're facing with marijuana?
Well, no.
No?
Believe it or not, after the banning of alcohol failed, some years after, various countries started to impose a ban on alcohol, on marijuana. And here what they said, they put marijuana into the most extreme category of drugs and said it has no medical use whatsoever. But cocaine and heroin was not in that same category. In other words, cannabis was considered to be so bad, so terrible a drug with no medical benefits. Don't talk about it could help with this and help with that, pain, asthma. No, they said no, it cannot help with anything. So therefore you can't use it for anything. But they found ways to use cocaine, found ways to use heroin, use all the other heroin-related products. And because of the history of alcohol, when you compare the deaths from drug use, I'm talking about all drugs, it's about 600,000 people who die each year, right? Whereas there's 2.6 million who die from alcohol. In other words, I'm making the point that 5 times as much people die from alcohol use than real drug-related use. And from cannabis, they do not have deaths from cannabis. The deaths is coming from fentanyl, from heroin, from anything like that. Alcohol, and in this last minute, let me say, when you ask the question, in the back of the brain, there's a particular part of the brain that controls our respiration, our pulse, and our ability to prevent vomiting. Cocaine, heroin, all these other drugs suppress that zone. And if somebody takes an overdose, their heart rate then drops. Their respiratory rate drops. They can vomit, and the vomit can go down from their stomach up into their mouth and down into their lungs. Surprisingly, with alcohol does not, you will go to sleep, knock you out, but it does not suppress your heart rate, doesn't suppress your respiratory rate, doesn't cause your vomiting reflex. And so as a result, you haven't seen overdose deaths from anybody taking cannabis. They can overdose, but overdose means they go to sleep. Whereas somebody who overdoses on fentanyl, cocaine, and so forth, when they overdose, they not only go to sleep, but their pulse rate drops from 60, 70 down to 10. Can't survive with that. Your respiratory rate, which is normally 16 beats a minute, drops to almost you're not breathing. And so as a result, people die from these other drug overdose. Then we come to the end of the show.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
You asked a good question.
We're actually going over time. I actually wanted to ask him more. We're out of time.
Out of time. So all the best, and happy 2025, everybody. Please stay safe. Cut that alcohol down.
People's Pharmacy, for all your pharmaceutical, skin and body care needs. Located on Grenville Street in Kingstown. They open